The front entrance of our house is rarely used. We usually enter through the side door to the garage or the sliding glass doors that lead to the patio. On the right side of the entryway, you'll find the formal living room. It is meticulously maintained, but is the least frequented room in the entire house. On the left side, at the end of the entry, there is a hallway that connects to 3 bedrooms, including our spacious master suite, as well as a guest bathroom. The formal living room, with its closed massive curtains, is engulfed in darkness. In that room, you'll find a white camelback couch against the back wall, with large wingback chairs on either side, all facing a walnut coffee table. Surprisingly, that morning, I found myself sitting in one of those wingback chairs, contemplating life while facing away from the archway between the entry and the living room. It was a spot where I often contemplated my life and pondered the potential losses during Lynn's absence. The idea of ending our troubled marriage brings forth concerns about our shared friends taking sides, the possible loss of our house, ongoing alimony payments, and the sudden disappearance of much of my net worth due to legal expenses. Dealing with Lynn, whom I can describe as vindictive, is undoubtedly a challenging task. Amidst my reflections, the side door opens, signaling Lynn's return from grocery shopping. I suddenly realize that I should have pretended to be in our bedroom to avoid yet another argument if caught lingering in the living room. Arguments have become a common occurrence, initiated by Lynn's unwarranted criticism for minor infractions, fabricated reasons, or sometimes no reason at all. I understand that it's a tactic she uses to keep me off balance. Lynn can drag arguments on for weeks over trivial matters, and I always find a way to placate her, believing it's better to end the disputes promptly. I find life unbearable with constant friction, which leaves me striving to settle fights as soon as possible, even though the challenge lies in the fact that they are incessant. After 10 years of marriage, I can't see any solution other than either passing away or getting a divorce. Nevertheless, I persistently try to improve the situation, primarily for my own sanity, rather than making things more pleasant for Lynn. As I hear the freezer door shutting, I realize that Lynn has finished putting away the groceries. Anticipating her request for me to retrieve the remaining groceries, I brace myself for her orders and forthcoming criticism. To avoid her for as long as possible, I remain motionless, waiting for her to call out or whistle. The sound of her whistle, resembling that of a dog, has become almost unbearable. But instead of hearing her voice, I hear light footsteps as she approaches the entryway. If I had looked, I would have seen her stop at the tiled floor, peering down the hallway to ensure she is alone. In that moment, Lynn contemplates calling me while still in the car, but feeling safe, she assumes that I am diligently working on the gazebo in the backyard. Within seconds, her cell phone chirps as she dials a number. Now standing at the entryway, just 5 feet away from the back of the chair where I sit, Lynn engages in a conversation with her father about their plans for Thursday afternoon. She mentions that she will call him at work after 1 o'clock to finalize the logistics. Still unnoticed, I listen attentively as Lynn discusses the details with her father, concluding the conversation with a lighthearted farewell. I hear the sound of her flip phone closing, and her footsteps retreat across the carpet towards the sliding glass door. Unaware of my labored breathing and the pounding of my heart and head, she continues whistling and calling out to me, assuming that I am still working on the gazebo project in the backyard. Tense situations are not new to me, and I rely on automatic responses honed from my experiences in the army and elsewhere. In such moments, the first rule is not to panic unless actively under attack. I utilize my knowledge to my advantage, carefully choosing the right time to engage, maintaining a blank face, controlling my breathing, and appearing as normal as possible. With that in mind, I stand up and walk into the den, stating, "I'm here. I was in the bathroom. I've got to run to the hardware store and get some parts for the gazebo." As I cross through the den, heading towards the kitchen and the side door, I avoid making eye contact with Lynn. I find myself marveling at my ability to articulate those words and restrain myself from reacting violently. Lynn glances at me and notices the redness in my face. She advises me to wear a hat, expressing concern about potential sunburn. She even mentions not wanting to see my skin peeling off in a couple of days. Additionally, she informs me about the groceries that need to be brought in before I go anywhere and emphasizes that I should not be gone all day. After dropping her phone into her purse on the kitchen counter, Lynn goes outside to inspect the progress I've made on the gazebo, leaving some criticisms for me to address upon my return. Lynn's communication style is rather typical, mostly involving instructions and implicit or explicit criticism. As she entered the yard, I took out her phone, checked the last number dialed, memorized it, and returned the phone to her bag. After I put the groceries away, I drove off in my little pickup truck, but didn't head to the building materials store. I'm staying at a local park a couple blocks away. For the first 15 minutes, I repeated the short conversation in my head, wanting to make sure I remembered every word so I could take notes. There was no doubt about its meaning. My wife is cheating on me, probably at home, maybe even in our bed while I'm at work. I was furious. I felt like I was financing her infidelity by working to support her. Who was the man she called Daddy? It wasn't her real father. The area code was local, and my parents lived 1,000 miles away in California. In the early days of our marriage, she sometimes called me Daddy in moments of sexual contact, but then stopped doing it. I thought it might be a signal of her desire to have children, but we decided not to have children a couple of years after the wedding. She was clearly a fatherly girl. Considering practical issues, I was thinking about my best plan of action. Her lover was supposed to enter through the back gate on Thursday, probably walking down the alley. I was thinking about ambushing him there, but I was wondering how to deal with my cheating wife if the lover was on foot. His car should be nearby. If the lover was on foot, his car should have been nearby. A thought occurred to me. Perhaps the lover left his car in the park. Determining who this person is has become important. The obvious solution was to call the number from her cell phone. It seemed possible for someone else to make the call as if it was a mistake. Who could have made this call if not me? Who else could have known about this? The answer was clear. Lynn's best friend is Sue. If Sue didn't tell me, I doubted anyone else did. Lynn's sister was an unlikely source of information, as they were not close after their sister's messy divorce and further separation from the family. May I ask Sue? I've known her as long as Lynn has, and Sue has always been my friend. However, women can be more devoted to each other than to their spouses. Sue was married to Nick, who was 15 years older than her, and they seemed to be the most loving couple in the world. I decided to try Nick. This meant a trip to the golf course, where Nick, as semi-pensioner, worked on Saturdays as a conscientious goodwill ambassador for the course in exchange for a free walkthrough in the middle of the week when the course was not unloaded. Along the way, I thought carefully about my approach. I couldn't just throw it away. What if the news would have reached Sue and then Lynn? I had to be careful. When we were driving a golf cart with Nick, he was checking the condition on the 7th hole. I asked a hypothetical question. I asked him about his attitude to confidential conversations, asking if he felt obligated to keep them confidential or share them with Sue. Nick looked at me strangely and continued moving forward a few yards. I clarified by asking if they always share what they hear from other people, even if it was told in secret. It was just a hypothetical scenario. Nick stopped on the lawn, turned to look directly at me with an almost expectant expression on his face. In response to my question, he said, "Do you have a specific question for me?" "If yes, then ask," maintaining the same strange and intense look. I asked Nick if he could keep our conversation confidential if I asked a question. I promised I wouldn't mention it unnecessarily, but if Sue asks, I won't lie to her. That was my principle. I assured him that I could keep a secret, but I couldn't deceive my friend. It was obvious that Nick knew something, and I felt that he wanted to share it with me. Gathering myself, I asked him bluntly if he knew anything about my wife's possible infidelity. I reframed the question to make it clearer by asking if he had any idea that Lynn might have a current or past relationship. Nick's reply gushed out like a raft bursting. He talked about an incident from last New Year's Eve at a Holden party. Everyone was outside getting ready for the fireworks when Sue felt sick from the champagne. Despite her occasional drinking, she went upstairs to the bathroom. On the landing, she heard someone trying to open the door handle while she was rushing into the toilet. When she washed up and came out of the bathroom, she heard noises from the end of the hallway, where it turns to some bedrooms. She was afraid that someone else might be ill, and went there and looked. Lynn ended up with her back to the wall at the end of the hallway, and some big guy, well, there's no good way to say it, pinned her against the wall, and she wrapped her legs around his waist. Lynn saw Sue standing there, smiling, waving her hand as if to say, "Get out of here." On the way home, she told Nick the details. Sue and Lynn, longtime friends, decided to discuss the situation before taking any action. I offered to reveal it to you immediately. Eventually, Sue talked to your wife, who told her that the Buddy White case was an isolated one and occurred under the influence of alcohol, conflict with you, and persistent harassment by Buddy, a famous bully who married a rich woman. Sue, aware of Buddy's reputation, asked me not to reveal this, not wanting to endanger your marriage because of an isolated incident. However, I made it clear to Sue that if you directly ask about it, I won't lie. This secret has been weighing on me all these 5 months. It's easier for me that it came out, but I'm truly sorry that you have to go through this, dude. Unfortunately, the situation is not over yet. Sue tricked her. Lynn continues to date Buddy, or perhaps already with someone else. I accidentally overheard her talking to him on the phone just an hour ago. Let's come back to me to discuss what Sue has to say. We left the golf courses in separate cars and headed to Sue and Nick's house. He gave the news to his wife, and she sat down and cried. She had high hopes for Maya and Lynn's relationship, ready to provide any support she could. However, upon learning that the affair was continuing, her mood changed. Sue felt betrayed, similar to what Lynn had done. Until now, she believed that the affair was over, and based her actions, or rather inaction, on this lie. Sue, I want you to do something for me. I've studied Lynn's phone and I have the number she dialed. Would you mind calling him, pretending to be the wrong number, and trying to find out his name? I want to confirm who she's connected to now. Sue, an editor living elsewhere, who had a PhD in English literature and had theatrical experience, coming up with a call using her acting and social skills. She chose an impeccable English accent, leaving a lasting impression. As she dialed the number on the speaker of the phone, she heard, "Hi, this is Buddy White." Sue blinked. Sorry, it turned out to be the wrong number. Well, it was unsatisfactory, she commented, seeing how the whole situation unfolded. However, the revelation was clear. Lynn did not end her affair with White, adding another important detail. While discussing our next steps, I insisted on getting them in their upcoming meeting on Thursday, gathering extensive evidence. I wanted to confront my wife, armed with copious facts, catch her in the middle of a case, and expose the lies that she certainly used to hide the situation. Having expressed doubts about hiring a detective due to the cost and uncertainty of Lynn's interaction before Thursday, I was looking for a quick way to gather evidence. They fell silent and thought for a minute or more. Sue suggested the idea of an employee. She suggested the idea that someone, like Lynn's best friend, would find out the truth from her. I was skeptical, but Sue insisted, saying, "Never underestimate a woman's anger." I had enough of her and the way she treated us all. I believe that I can come up with a story that will make her tell everything. Over the next hour, we worked out a plan. Sue called Lynn urgently, mentioning a similar situation from the New Year's Eve party. Lynn agreed to the meeting, secretly rejoicing at her friend's new determination. Sue arrived earlier at the coffee shop, choosing a table under the awning and placing her bag with a secret camera. After making sure of the optimal angle and conducting audio tests, she strategically positioned the chairs. The air was calm, excluding the possibility of wind noise. She set up the camera to record with one button, and the 16 GB memory card offered ample storage. Nick masterfully secured the camera and bag with sticky tapes, masking the lens and microphone holes in the bag's pattern. Sue was ready when Lynn arrived. Sue asked Lynn to order coffee and said she would keep them in the most secluded corner. Sue pressed the button when Lynn returned with the drinks, quickly confirming the recording. They quickly laid out the basics, and Sue began her story. Sue told Lynn about her dilemma, saying that she has a boyfriend who is interested in her. She didn't know what to do, describing him as attractive, especially since she hadn't made love to Nick in a long time. Sue revealed that Nick fully trusts her and that she has never been unfaithful. However, she admitted feeling tempted and sought Lynn's advice. Sue wanted to understand how Lynn felt after the New Year's party and asked if she would regret going through with it. Lynn responded by encouraging Sue, saying, "Go for it, girl. Honestly, I can't understand why you haven't done this sooner. Nick is nice and all, but sweetheart, he's past his prime. You're still young and beautiful. I've always admired your looks, but I've never understood why you waste your time with Nick." Sue was surprised by Lynn's lack of remorse and asked if the New Year's party was truly a one-time thing. Lynn explained, "My dear, I won't lie to you. I had to say that at the time, or you might have spilled everything. But now that you're in a similar situation, we can share all of this. In fact, we'll have some truly intense discussions. Lynn, let it all out. I'm so intrigued now that I'm considering doing it myself. How did it start with you and Buddy? Are you still involved? The look in your eyes says it all. If you're not excited now, I bet you will be in a few minutes." Lynn proceeded to share the details of her encounter with Buddy at Holden's Halloween party. She described how they met 2 months before, with Buddy showing interest in her at the party. Lynn explained that they discreetly met on the landing and ended up in the bathroom. She recounted the passionate encounter, emphasizing Buddy's qualities. Lynn affirmed that she was still with him and would be meeting him in her own bed next week. Sue inquired about herself, expressing concern about any feelings of guilt. Lynn dismissed any guilt, stating, "Sue, Paul is your husband. You can't treat a husband like a lover. They have different roles. Paul is there to do what I want, but I need something more intimate. Lynn explained her strategy with Paul, treating him like a good provider who follows her orders. She mentioned using diversionary tactics, like checking for perfume, to make Paul believe she would never cheat. Lynn compared having Paul around to having a loyal friend, someone she can control. She highlighted the freedom she enjoyed, knowing his whereabouts and never worrying about him catching her with a lover. Sue asked if Lynn had other lovers, and Lynn replied that she couldn't even count them all. She shared details about her first lover, whom she picked up in a supermarket during their first year of marriage. He never knew her real name, and they stayed in various hotel rooms for 6 months until he became too clingy. Lynn mentioned the need to be cautious with younger guys. After that, there were a series of one-time encounters, including a kinky salesman friend who only visited town a few times a year. Lynn stated that Buddy had kept her entertained for longer than almost any of them, describing him as a passionate lover. Lynn shared details about Buddy's marital situation, being married to a clueless woman who works while he plays around. She mentioned being in control of when he could visit her. Then, Sue asked Lynn about her new conquest, and Lynn narrated a prepared story about her fictional lover, Rod. The details were not crucial, but Sue believed every word, and Lynn encouraged her to take advantage of the situation. Sue expressed amazement at Lynn's control and doubted if she could treat Nick the same way Lynn treats Paul. Lynn explained the dynamics of the animal kingdom, comparing dominant individuals to the rest of the pack. She assured Sue that freedom would be hers. Lynn suggested starting with Rod and enjoying every second, stating that Nick would still be there and would naturally fit into a submissive role. Lynn addressed concerns about STDs and asked if Sue used contraceptives. Sue explained that most of the time she made the man use protection, but it was different with Buddy due to his aggressiveness. Sue mentioned a time when she got scared because it hurt to urinate, but the doctor said it was irritation from rough intimacy. There was also a time when she got infected with gonorrhea, which made her more cautious. Sue asked how Lynn managed to hide all of this from Paul, and Lynn described allowing him to go out by mentioning his interest in playing guitar with friends. She gave him a choice, leading to a confrontation later when she took antibiotics. Eager to get the recording back to Nick and herself, Sue thanked Lynn and left for home. The conspirators watched the video in disbelief. Sue and Nick could hardly recognize Lynn because she had never been so harsh toward Paul when others were around. I was shocked too, although not as much as the couple, having come to know that Lynn was capable of almost anything. Sue brought up Anita White and mentioned her concerns about Anita's knowledge of her husband's infidelity. She expressed the dilemma of whether to inform Anita about Buddy being with Lynn, considering the risk of Anita blowing the cover. Sue described Anita as seeming deeply unhappy with her husband's reputation as a bully, and pondered if Anita might be entirely cowed by him. Sue suggested that talking to Anita might affect her plans and sought help from Lynn in handling the situation. Sue thanked us for our assistance and assured that we would be kept out of further details. She specifically asked me not to do anything stupid. In response, I acknowledged the mistakes I had made over the past 10 years, but clarified that I didn't intend anything violent. I assured them that I would handle the situation in my way and requested strict confidentiality. I asked everyone to avoid answering if Anita called, taking full responsibility. Later that evening, Sue phoned Anita White and introduced herself. She confirmed they had talked at Holden's parties and asked if Anita could talk freely. Sue then broached the subject, revealing that Buddy was cheating on Anita with someone Sue knew. She expressed regret and conveyed Anita's right to know. Silence followed on the other end, with Sue discerning sniffles and sobs. Anita shared her frustration, mentioning past issues that Buddy claimed were resolved a year ago. She had taken him back based on his promise, with a clear warning of ending the relationship if he repeated his mistakes. Sue offered comfort and assistance, expressing a willingness to help based on Anita's decision. Anita, appreciating the concern, outlined her resolution. She emphasized that her partner would never share her bed again, detailing the terms of a stringent prenuptial agreement that would leave him penniless in case of divorce due to proven infidelity. She described him as unfit for employment, but only for accompanying her to events and engaging in extramarital affairs. She affirmed her determination to ensure he faced the consequences. In response to my offer to gather evidence, Anita committed to maintaining composure for a few days until she had the evidence in her hands. Linda committed to maintaining composure for a few days until she had the evidence in her hands. Plans were made for someone to collect preliminary evidence from my office the next day. Sue arranged a meeting, contacting me at work to schedule an appointment in her office on Monday at 1 p.m. Entering Sue's office with the video camera, I introduced myself to Mrs. White, the wife of the man involved with my wife. I placed the camera on her desk, cooed the relevant section, and played the recording. Despite the faint screen visibility, the audio quality was excellent. Witnessing Mrs. White's tears, I offered a comforting gesture, acknowledging her familiarity with her husband's behavior over time. Subsequently, I revealed my plans to Anita, stating that participation was optional, but extending the offer nonetheless. Anita disclosed the years of intimidation she had endured, expressing her desire to turn the tables and make her husband suffer. When asked about potential violence, I acknowledged that things might get messy but assured her I had no intention of causing damage. Following the meeting with Anita, work became an unwelcome distraction. Lingering effects of Lynn's words in the video affected me deeply. While acknowledging some truth in her remarks, I defended my conciliatory nature, understanding her perception of me as a wimp. Despite the hurt, I contemplated showcasing a different side of myself on Thursday, pondering how Lynn would react to a more assertive approach. I dismissed any idea of reconciliation, recognizing the irreparable loss of trust in our relationship. Tuesday and Wednesday were marked by reduced office productivity as I meticulously reviewed potential scenarios. The complexity of variables reminded me of the fragility of well-laid plans. Multiple potential outcomes, including my preferred approach, were considered. Thursday's events would necessitate improvisation, and I dedicated time to refining my physical abilities in anticipation. At home, tensions prevailed, limiting conversations to necessities. Lynn, typically assertive, observed my recent behavior, aiming to understand the issue and regain control. Ironically, she found herself anticipating Thursday, speculating on the potential insights a passionate encounter with Buddy might provide. On Tuesday night, as Lynn showered, I searched my dresser drawers for a childhood keepsake from my grandfather. Both my father and grandfather had military backgrounds. Grandpa, after Normandy, he acquired a set of steel knuckles from a German soldier as a war souvenir. As I examined the menacing steel equipment, I recalled Grandpa's caution about its use, but acknowledgement that it might be handy someday. That day had nearly arrived. It was a form of war. Lynn and her lover had engaged in unfair play, prompting me to force a hearty breakfast on Thursday. I knew I wouldn't eat lunch, but hoped to slow down my rival. Pacing in my office, I deposited items in the guest bedroom, contingent on Lynn's choice of waiting in the backyard or returning inside after opening the gate. Regardless, I could adapt. Manipulate the set of knuckles on my desk, I paced, stoking my controlled anger. By 1 o'clock, I changed into jeans, a t-shirt, and sturdy running shoes, checking my pockets, cell phone, keys, knuckles, and wallet. I called Lynn from my desk phone to preempt her call. The conversation was calm and non-threatening, explaining meetings and phone unavailability, anticipating a possible delay in returning home. Lynn interpreted my call as a sign of returning docility, relaxing with this knowledge. Perhaps she'd reward me with cool-down makeup closeness. That evening, she prepared to meet her lover, and the two drove to the park in 20 minutes. Loverboy's car was absent, so Anita dropped him off and he jogged to his house, slipping into the backyard through the side gate. Positioned behind a photinia bush on the house's end, away from the garage, I waited, nervously checking the muted phone's time. At 1:45, Lynn emerged in the backyard, dressed in a string bikini, heading to the back gate. After unlocking it and surveying the alley, she closed the gate and settled into a lounge chair under the pecan tree. This signaled me. I had left the side gate ajar. I slipped back through the opening, circled to the front door, and using my key, opened it. Walking over the spot where my wife's betrayal had been exposed days earlier, I entered. In the spare room, I grabbed a cordless drill and some hardware, entering the master bedroom. In less than a minute, I installed a hasp on the inside of the door, leaving a lock hanging. Placing a small piece of wood between the door edge and the jamb, I ensured it wouldn't close, just in case my wife attempted to shut it. Heart pounding, I took the drill to the guest room, picked up the video camera, adorned my right hand with brass knuckles, and waited. Many things could have gone wrong. I might have forgotten a step. Lynn could have unlocked the gate earlier, or her lover could have arrived prematurely. Fortunately, none of that occurred. With controlled breath, I awaited the final assault, planned and executed on my terms. Standing brass knuckles on my right hand, I held the video camera, peering through the slightly open guest bedroom door. The dark hallway might impact video quality, but the audio would be crucial. As the sliding glass door moved and voices emerged, Lynn's laughter mingled with a male growl. Imagining the man's hands on her, I glimpsed my wife, bikini top already discarded, entering the master bedroom with her lover, neglecting to close the door. I followed at a distance, still recording. Kneeling at the door, I observed Buddy embracing Lynn, who closed her eyes and unbuttoned his shirt. Carefully, I set the video camera on the dresser inside the door, capturing the unfolding scene on the bed. This waiting was the most challenging, a desire to record the undeniable act, leaving no room for denial, fueled by my suppressed rage. Retreating from the door, I stood prepared. Limiting peeks to avoid detection, I observed the couple caressing, both now undressed. With an entire afternoon ahead, they took their time, surrendering to passion. Outside the door, I overheard Lynn referring to Buddy as Daddy, confirming my suspicions about her daddy issues. Anticipating retribution, I couldn't wait to confront them. I heard Buddy's voice expressing eagerness. Peeking again, I saw the man between Lynn's legs, then witnessed the plunge and heard her scream in an unprecedented manner. They began moving together, uttering curses and unintelligible sounds. Having seen enough, I touched the brass knuckles for luck and silently approached the bed. Lynn noticed me just before I forcefully shoved Buddy in the ribs, ejecting him from her. Screaming, he'd accused Buddy of violating my wife. Shocked, Buddy's face transformed, and he reverted to his bullying demeanor, moving to deal with me. I withdrew a few steps as Buddy turned the far corner of the bed, heading toward him. Misinterpreting my move as a retreat, Lynn, now on her knees, clutched the covers, yelling for me to get out and not hurt Buddy. I shifted back on my trailing foot, took a running step, and hurled myself into Buddy's chest, delivering the brass knuckles forcefully to the solar plexus. They crashed to the floor, with my full weight compressing his chest. In situations where breathing is compromised, all other considerations become irrelevant. Buddy pushed, attempting to dislodge me, emitting a high-pitched whining noise, struggling for breath. Panic filled his eyes. Sitting up and straddling my opponent, I observed Buddy's hands pressing on the floor, trying to find a better position to breathe. I then administered the coup de grace, raising my right hand high and bringing the steel on my fist down directly onto the center of Buddy's terrified face with considerable force. With nowhere for his head to recoil and mitigate the blow, I heard bones satisfyingly crunch and witnessed blood pouring from Buddy's ruined face. Hindered by blood flowing into his mouth and throat, Buddy was completely incapacitated. I got up, walking toward the door, content with the initial confrontation. Ignoring Lynn's screams until her plea for help reached me, I realized she thought I was leaving, aligning with the plan for psychological warfare. After kicking the small wood piece away from the jamb, I closed the door and locked the hasp in place. Turning to face Lynn, I observed her expression shift from anger to frantic realization that we were all locked in, she was undressed, and had no protection from this unpredictable version of her husband. In response, she altered her tone, pleading with me. Paul, oh Paul, I know it looks bad, but he forced me into this. He's a bully. He threatened to hurt me and you too. He said he would destroy you to have me. I had to do it. I didn't want to. Approaching the bed slowly as she delivered her explanations, I maintained a stoic expression. Dismissing her with a stern command, I stated, "Shut up, you're lying. I know you've been involved with him for months." Redirecting my attention to the wounded person on the floor, who was gurgling and showing signs of distress, I made it clear that I wanted Buddy hurt, not dead. Carefully positioning him close to the iron bedstead, I placed him on his side for blood drainage. Retrieving 5 pairs of handcuffs from the top dresser drawer, I proceeded to secure Buddy's ankles and wrists to the bedstead with 4 of them. Returning to my prone wife, I maneuvered her legs off the bed, secured her hands behind her back, and guided her into the bathroom, seating her on the toilet. I conveyed a stern message, urging her not to cause any damage and insisting that it was time for her to confess. While speaking, I emphasized the presence of brass knuckles on my right fist, ensuring she noticed them. I demanded the complete narrative, how she met the other person, the reasons behind her actions, and why she thought it acceptable to betray me. Additionally, I sought details about her involvement with other men over the past decade, making it clear that we had ample time to unravel the story throughout the afternoon. Lynn made a calculated decision, considering that I wouldn't be spending time with her lover. I knew some details about her actions, but the extent of my knowledge remained uncertain. Questions lingered in my mind. Could she manipulate certain aspects to make her infidelity sound less treacherous? Was she daring enough to lie? Lynn expressed her reluctance, sharing that she never intended for the situation to unfold as it did. She described the aggressiveness of an imposing individual who approached her at a party hosted by the Holtons, ultimately luring her upstairs. Unaware of the person's intentions, Lynn found herself in a vulnerable position, with no one around to assist. Curious about the details, I inquired, "What party was that?" Sue, having witnessed the incident, could provide additional information, confirming that I had been cornered. In my quest for more information, Lynn speculated that Sue or Nick might have exposed her. She insisted that Sue had witnessed only the New Year's party, but I countered, reminding her that it was Halloween when she had been with the other person over 20 times. Determined to uncover the truth, I questioned her about who might have revealed her secret. With a sense of defiance, Lynn responded, "You'd be surprised. How many people do you think Loverboy has told? Maybe it was one of them, but that doesn't matter. Sue told you this, that person. I'll claw her eyes out. But I know something about her that will wreck her marriage, and I'll sure as hell use it." After Lynn shared details about Sue's fabricated lover Rod, she claimed credit for inventing him for my benefit. She described how they orchestrated conversations to extract information, with Sue recording the entire exchange and storing it on multiple DVDs to be sent out at her discretion. Lynn clarified that Sue hadn't initially informed her of the situation, and no specific details were provided by Sue. Regarding the revelation about the New Year's party, I pointed out that I learned about her extensive history during a video conversation. I recalled a phone call Lynn made to her lover last Saturday at our entryway, where she openly expressed affection for him, inadvertently disclosing everything about her past. Convinced that I had sufficient information, I informed her that any further communication should be directed to my lawyer and legal papers would be served in a couple of days. Expressing the need to consult with an attorney about our situation, I pulled out my cell phone and called Anita to handle the situation. After a brief conversation, I chuckled and ended the call. Marching Lynn back into the bedroom, I showed her the sorry state of her lover, undressed, handcuffed, wheezing, and covered in blood, almost causing her to vomit. I deposited her on the bed, turned off the video camera, unlocked the bedroom door, and opened it for Anita, who had been waiting outside in her car. Addressing Anita, I remarked, "Well, Anita, I saved you some of him. His face is not much to look at now, though. Here's his latest lover, my soon-to-be former wife, Lynn. Have anything to say to her?" Anita approached Lynn sitting on the bed and slapped her hard across the left cheek, evening out the red marks on her face. Expressing frustration, Anita berated Lynn for her foolishness and revealed how highly she regarded the man lying on the floor. Turning to me, Anita pondered, "What are we going to do with him now, Anita? I'm inclined to toss this one out the door with no clothes on and see how long it takes her to find another companion." "Get it? Companion." I expressed relief that she had preserved his tool for me. I mentioned having a razor-sharp new hunting knife and suggested cutting off his tool to present it to Lynn, who seemed to adore it. Additionally, I considered stashing his balls in the vault for the safety of women in the town. I intended to enforce my prenup, putting his balls in a vice, as he would get nothing if caught cheating. We planned to escort him to the hospital, providing a fabricated story about finding him injured in the garage. This would ensure his cooperation, knowing he could be cut off without a dime. Perhaps I'd throw him a few crumbs. Regarding Lynn, I mentioned her attachment to her father and pondered if there was more to their story during her upbringing, though lacking any proof. In the event of a messy divorce, I noted that her father might disinherit her, as he did with her sister, to protect his reputation and substantial inheritance. Even after the divorce, I would retain intriguing videos to share if necessary, keeping her in check. I decided to let her get dressed, take her car, and find a place to reflect, cautioning that her ATM and credit cards wouldn't work. I provided her with a quarter, sarcastically remarking it was for a two-bit fancy woman. Maintaining a distant friendship with Anita, we sometimes reached out to each other when feeling low, both hesitant to dive into another relationship after being burned. I acknowledged the pain caused by my harsh treatment of Lynn during the ordeal, recognizing it wasn't the real me. Despite liking it to war, where cruelty can emerge, I vowed never to be in that position again. However, I had no regrets about marring Buddy's face. Anita's insurance covered basic repairs to Buddy's face, and she cut him loose with a little more money than the prenup required. His attempts to attract women proved challenging. In the ensuing months, my depression deepened and I faded from sight. Lynn accepted a fair settlement and moved in with her sister, seeking help. She grappled with the severe miscalculation of her actions, feeling sick when watching nature shows about animal of prey. Terms like alpha dog or pecking order triggered discomfort, and nightmares about that night with Buddy and me occasionally haunted her. Despite occasional feelings of missing me, I harbored no such sentiments towards her.